Echoes of ancient cataclysms and legends, White Island mining disaster, and the power of unexplained mysteries. Human history is an unending tapestry of enigmas stretching back thousands of years to a time when the line between fact and legend was not so clearly drawn. These mysteries come in many forms: forgotten civilizations buried beneath volcanic ash, labyrinthine ruins that defy reason, and catastrophic events whose exact causes still evade modern science. Each time a new discovery is made, it offers a glimpse of a bygone era, reminding us that our past is far more intricate than we might have imagined. This realization fuels our collective curiosity. We comb through the geological layers of Earth, delve into ancient texts, and re-examine artifacts in an effort to uncover a narrative that is still taking shape. One of the most compelling examples of this phenomenon is the White Island mining disaster, which took place in 1914 off the northern coast of New Zealand. White Island, known in the indigenous Maori language as Wakari, has long been recognized as one of the most active volcanic islands in the South Pacific. At the beginning of the 20th century, sulfur mining was a primary industry there, with workers toiling under hazardous conditions in pursuit of a resource that was critically important in industrial processes at the time. Then, in September of that year, disaster struck with terrifying suddenness. A massive volcanic landslide tore through the island's crater rim, raining down thousands of tons of rock, mud, and lava onto the unsuspecting miners below. Tragically, 11 men vanished in an instant, swallowed by the molten chaos of Wakari. In the immediate aftermath, rescue teams faced the daunting challenge of navigating an area that was not only geologically unstable, but constantly spewing noxious gases. Search parties tried desperately to locate the missing miners, but not a single body was ever recovered. This harrowing detail amplifies the disaster's sorrow as families were left in a tormenting state of uncertainty. Even the identities of some victims remain incomplete, creating an unsettling layer of ambiguity that continues to haunt their descendants. Over time, nature reclaimed the scene. Erosion, additional volcanic activities, and the passage of decades erased the physical markers of that day, effectively burying any remaining evidence. What intensifies the mystery is that despite scientific inquiries, the precise cause of the landslide remains elusive. Initial theories pointed to a sudden eruption or underground explosion. Yet further geological surveys found no conclusive data supporting a major eruptive event at that exact moment. This has led to alternative proposals. Maybe the extensive mining operations had so weakened the island's structure that a minor tremor triggered a catastrophic collapse. Alternatively, an unusual geological configuration might have set the stage for the abrupt landslide. No hypothesis has been proven definitively correct, leaving the fate of the miners and the exact nature of that cataclysm an open question. For the local community, the event serves as a stark reminder of humankind's fragility in the face of nature's power. The tragedy also highlights that even modern scientific tools can sometimes fall short when confronting the deeper forces shaping our planet. Ultimately, the White Island mining disaster endures as a poignant emblem of the mysteries that persist beneath the Earth's crust, a sobering testament to the fact that certain truths may be permanently interred beneath layers of volcanic rock and the relentless march of time. Legendary labyrinth of the Minotaur, Greece. When we turn our attention to the classical world, Few legends captivate the mind as thoroughly as the myth of the Minotaur and its labyrinth on the island of Crete. Ancient Greek mythology portrays the Minotaur as a being that is part human, part bull, locked deep within a convoluted maze that only the bravest and most cunning could navigate. This story has stood the test of millennia, not just as a captivating fable, but also as a potent symbol of the unknown corners of the human psyche, our fears, our desires, and our ability to confront the monstrous. Real-world connections to this myth have tantalized explorers and archaeologists for ages. The key question is whether such a labyrinth truly existed or if it was purely a narrative device. Early 20th century excavations at the Palace of Knossos, conducted by Sir Arthur Avens, unearthed the labyrinthine floor plan of the Minoan royal complex. Corridors, storerooms, staircases, and intricately adorned chambers came together in a bewildering network that seemed to match ancient descriptions of the Minotaur's lair. Some scholars are convinced that the overall disorienting complexity of Knossos naturally gave rise to the labyrinth legend. Yet counter-arguments abound. Other researchers suggest that the real labyrinth may lie beneath a site known as Gortin, about 20 miles south of Knossos. Gortin boasts a subterranean cave complex so intricate that local legend calls it the Labyrinth Cave. The passageways there twist into the darkness, forming an environment that is easy to get lost in, especially when relying on torchlight or rudimentary lanterns. Those favoring this theory believe the labyrinth legend was inspired by an actual place designed to confound intruders or store valuable treasures. Alternatively, yet another hypothesis posits that the labyrinth could be found not on Crete, but on the Greek mainland, pointing to various cave systems and underground constructions that date to the Bronze Age. In these caverns, archaeologists have identified signs of human activity that defy simple explanation, including winding tunnels and puzzling architectural elements. The lack of definitive evidence linking these sites to the Minotaur legend only heightens the mystery, allowing the story to maintain its power in the collective imagination. What fascinates many is how the narrative of a labyrinth and a monstrous inhabitant resonates with so many cultures and times, suggesting that the fear of an impenetrable maze is nearly universal. On a deeper level, the labyrinth can be read as a metaphor for human consciousness, an elaborate structure built by our own hands, containing a dark core that must be confronted. Whether rooted in literal truth or psychological allegory, the myth's staying power underscores how much ancient stories continue to shape our perception of the past. As with many of the most enduring legends, the search for the real labyrinth might be as much about unearthing the complexities of our own nature as it is about discovering the physical remains of a hidden world. Anunnaki, ancient gods or extraterrestrial visitors. Moving from the Aegean to the cradle of civilization, the region of Mesopotamia offers perhaps one of the most hotly debated subjects in the realm of ancient mysteries, the Anunnaki. In traditional Sumerian texts, the Anunnaki were revered as gods, omnipotent beings who descended from the heavens to establish order on earth. Represented on cuneiform tablets and temple reliefs, these deities wielded enormous authority, shaping human affairs and governing mortal destinies. They were depicted with wings-horned crowns and a regal presence suggesting divine or cosmic origins that transcended mere human understanding. The notion of divine beings intermingling with humans is not unique to Mesopotamia. Similar motifs appear in Egyptian, Greek, and Hindu traditions. But what sets the Anunnaki apart is the modern reinterpretation popularized by researchers like Zecharia Sitchin and Erich von Däniken. They propose that the Anunnaki were in fact alien visitors from a distant star system, or possibly from an undiscovered planet called Nibiru, who genetically engineered early humans to serve as laborers in gold mines. These controversial theories gained traction in the second half of the 20th century, feeding into a broader fascination with paleocontact and ancient astronaut narratives. Critics, however, argue that the ancient astronaut hypothesis relies heavily on misreadings of Sumerian iconography and mythic metaphor. They point out that handbag-like objects frequently depicted in Sumerian art were likely cultural or religious symbols, not advanced technology. Likewise, ziggurats and other monumental structures, while impressive, could have been constructed using human ingenuity and mathematics without extraterrestrial assistance. Traditional archaeologists emphasize that believing humans were incapable of such achievements diminishes the creativity and drive that ancient civilizations evidently possessed. Adding to the mystery are the thousands of untranslated or partially translated cuneiform tablets. Each newly deciphered tablet can shift our understanding of the Sumerians' worldview, religious practices, and scientific knowledge. The presence of references to cosmic cycles, advanced mathematics, and seemingly out-of-place scientific observations only serves to spark further speculation about the true scope of their achievements. Did they truly come to these understandings independently, or is there an element of external influence woven into their culture? Regardless of where one stands on the Anunnaki debate, it is undeniable that the Sumerians pioneered many aspects of civilization. From codified law to city planning, from the earliest forms of writing to complex religious belief systems, their legacy is integral to human history. The question of whether they had help from beyond Earth remains a contentious one. Mainstream science requires reproducible evidence and peer-reviewed confirmation, neither of which has emerged from the ancient astronaut camp. Still, the absence of proof has not dimmed the allure. The Anunnaki remain an iconic puzzle symbolizing the larger human quest to understand who we are, where we come from, and whether we are truly alone in the universe. The origins of ancient monsters. Vampires before Dracula. Beyond debates about gods and extraterrestrials, the ancient world brimmed with tales of monsters, entities that embodied communal fears or moral lessons. One of the most pervasive monstrous archetypes is the vampire, a creature forever linked with dread and the draining of life essence. While most people today associate vampires with Gothic castles, caped aristocrats, and the haunting figure of Count Dracula, the beginnings of vampire lore stretch much farther back in time, deep into the cradle of civilization itself. In the records of early Mesopotamian societies more than 5,000 years ago, we find possible prototypes for modern vampires in the form of wandering spirits known as Edimu. These were not well-groomed aristocrats preying on unsuspecting villagers under a moonlit sky. Instead, Edimu were souls denied proper burial rites or those who had died under tragic or mysterious circumstances. According to Sumerian belief, these restless spirits had the power to siphon the life force of the living, often manifesting as diseases and unexplained illnesses. Though they left no telltale bite marks, their presence was greatly feared, a chilling reminder of the thin line separating the living from the forgotten dead. The idea that vampires originated in Eastern Europe as suave cape-wearing fiends emerged centuries later. Yet similar themes resonate in other parts of the world, such as the Baobhan Sith in Scottish lore. These creatures are said to appear as enchanting young women dressed in green, roaming the misty forests in search of unwitting travelers. Luring their victims through seduction and captivating dance, they would then reveal their savage nature, using razor-sharp nails to tear flesh and drain blood. Though culturally disparate, both Adimu and Baobhan Sith highlight how ancient and cross-cultural the fear of predatory spirits truly is. From the earliest Sumerian texts to the folklore of Northern Europe, stories of vampiric entities underscore a universal dread, losing vitality to an unseen and malevolent force. In times of disease, outbreaks and high mortality rates, blaming a supernatural predator offered a way for communities to grapple with fear and uncertainty. When we look at how these myths evolved, we see that different societies emphasized aspects relevant to their specific cultural contexts. For Mesopotamians, the lack of proper burial rites was a terrifying transgression. For the Scots, a breathtaking yet deadly apparition in the forest symbolized the perilous lure of the wild. Over the centuries, these ancient fears underwent numerous transformations, gradually shaping into the refined, but no less terrifying, vampire archetype popularized by Gothic literature. Modern interpretations often place vampires in luxurious palaces or hidden enclaves in major cities, reflecting society's evolving anxieties. Yet the seeds of these tales can be traced back to at least the Sumerians, whose spiritual worldview underscored a profound belief in the dangers of unrestful spirits. That these stories have remained vibrant for so long is a testament to their deep psychological resonance, reminding us that our fears and legends are as old as civilization itself. The mystery of Chinese coins in medieval England. Shifting our focus from supernatural legends to an archaeological curiosity, we encounter a puzzle that challenges assumptions about medieval Europe's global interactions: the discovery of ancient Chinese coins in England. For years, people assumed that trade between medieval Britain and East Asia was either non-existent or extremely limited. Yet in the fields of Cheshire in northern England and Hampshire in the south, 2 Chinese coins, each nearly 1,000 years old, were unearthed. At first glance, these coins might seem to be part of a much later Victorian-era hobbyist collection, a plausible explanation as the craze for Oriental artifacts swept through Europe during the 19th century. However, closer analysis led by scholars like Dr. Caitlin Green has cast doubt on the Victorians' collection theory. These coins were found near other medieval artifacts in contexts that suggest they were deposited centuries before the widespread practice of collecting East Asian antiquities in Britain. In Hampshire, the coin lay only about 20 meters from a spot where Chinese porcelain, also believed to be of medieval origin, had been discovered. Meanwhile, in Cheshire, the coin was intermixed with hordes of Roman and early modern items. The puzzle becomes ever more intriguing when historical records are considered by the 13th century. There is evidence of sporadic contact between England and Asia. One documented case involves a Flemish explorer, William of Rubruck, who in 1254 met an Englishman living in Karakoram, the capital of the Mongol Empire. A decade later, Mongol envoys even made their way across the English Channel, causing a stir at King Henry III's court. In 1313, King Edward II is said to have sent a letter to the Emperor of China requesting safe passage for an English bishop. All these references, while scattered and inconsistent, point to an undercurrent of connectivity that reached well beyond Europe's shores. The question remains exactly how did the coins reach English soil, and why have only a scant few such artifacts turned up? While official records of trade routes between medieval England and China are sparse, we must consider the possibility that these pathways, though rarely documented, existed through intermediary traders or adventurous missionaries. Overland routes like the Silk Road and maritime passages through the Indian Ocean might have facilitated occasional indirect exchanges of goods. The presence of Chinese porcelain, recognized for its high value, even then suggests that exotic items were indeed circulating among Europe's elite. These findings compel us to revise the long-standing narrative that medieval Europe was largely insular and disconnected from distant civilizations. The Chinese coins stand as tangible evidence that small but meaningful exchanges of cultural and economic significance could and did occur. Though still surrounded by unanswered questions, each archaeological discovery adds a new dimension to our understanding of the medieval world. It is a testament to how a single artifact can overturn entrenched beliefs and reaffirm the global interconnectedness of human societies, even at times in history we often consider isolated or insular. The Bronze Age cannibal massacre in Somerset. While coins and trade routes speak to the more civilized aspects of the past, other discoveries pull us into the darker recesses of prehistoric human behavior. One such chilling finding is the Bronze Age cannibal massacre in Somerset, England. Archaeologists working in the region discovered more than 3,000 human bone fragments in a deep pit dating back nearly 3,000 years. Initial theories posited that these remains might represent a communal grave or a ceremonial burial site. But a closer examination painted a far more unsettling picture. Cuts on the bones, fractures in the skulls, and other patterns all indicated severe violence. Many of the victims had suffered lethal blows, and the subsequent dismemberment of their bodies was exact enough to suggest a structured process rather than a random act. Even more disturbing were the clear signs of flesh being stripped from the bones, along with bite marks that pointed conclusively to cannibalism. The immediate question was whether these acts were born out of desperation, perhaps a last resort in a time of famine, or if they were part of a sinister social or ritual practice. Research led by experts like Professor Rick Schulting of Oxford University uncovered evidence that the community had other sources of sustenance. Remains of cattle and other livestock found in the same context signaled that starvation was unlikely. Thus, if the pit in Somerset was a site of cannibalism, it may not have been an act of survival, but rather one of punishment or ceremonial significance. The possibility arises that victims could have been prisoners, captured enemies, or individuals deemed traitors who were subjected to a fate intended to terrify observers and send a stark warning about the power wielded by local elites or warrior classes. Interestingly, the absence of extensive defensive wounds on many skeletons supports the theory that these people might have been incapacitated, ambushed, or otherwise unable to fight back. This further strengthens the notion of a coordinated, methodical event rather than a spontaneous act of mob violence. While modern sensibilities recoil at the thought of cannibalism as a deliberate act, archaeological evidence from across prehistoric Europe and indeed elsewhere, points to its occurrence in various cultural contexts, from spiritual rites to expressions of dominance. Such findings highlight the complexity of Bronze Age societies. We often paint a simplistic image of prehistoric communities as small bands of hunter-gatherers or early agrarians living in relative harmony. But the Somerset Pit reveals that these groups could be every bit as capable of organized violence and psychological warfare as later, more civilized states. The moral codes of the time, if they existed in a manner recognizable to us, did not necessarily prohibit such extreme measures. In examining these grim remnants, we are forced to confront a disturbing truth: the capacity for violence, even to the point of ritualistic cannibalism, is woven into the human story far more deeply than we might wish to believe. The mistaken Ushiawa man in Japan. On the other side of the globe, a different kind of archaeological revelation reminds us just how fragile our interpretations of the past can be. The so-called Ushiawa man discovery in Japan encapsulates a lesson in humility for the scientific community. In the 1950s, fossilized bone fragments were unearthed in the Ushikawa region, more than 100 miles from Tokyo. Archaeologists initially believed these remains dated back roughly 20,000 years, potentially shedding invaluable light on Japan's prehistoric populations. Dubbed the Ushiawa man, this find was eagerly embraced by both scholars and the public as a missing piece of the human evolutionary puzzle in East Asia. For 3 decades, the Ushiawa man was mentioned in textbooks and research articles, championed as crucial evidence of human habitation during the late Pleistocene. Excitement ran high as Japan's archaeological community sought to position the archipelago within the broader narrative of early human migration. Then, by the late 1980s, questions arose. Some researchers noticed anomalies in the bone morphology, suspecting that perhaps the remains were not human after all. Critics, however, ran into a major obstacle. No other large mammal bones had been documented at the site to offer a comparative framework. Lacking sophisticated techniques like DNA analysis, the debate remained unresolved for a time. It was not until the early 21st century that more advanced diagnostic methods became available. A research team led by Professor Jin Shuga at the University of Tokyo used modern DNA testing and 3-dimensional morphological scans to re-examine the fabled remains. To everyone's shock, the bones turned out to belong not to an ancient human, but to a prehistoric species of brown bear. This revelation effectively undermined decades of academic speculation and forced historians to rewrite a key chapter of Japan's prehistory. The Ushiawa fiasco underscores how swiftly scientific consensus can shift with the introduction of new technology and more rigorous analytical methods. Before DNA testing, archaeologists had relied on visual inspection and contextual clues, an approach vulnerable to misinterpretations. The field was ripe for confirmation bias, especially when researchers were eager to find evidence supporting a particular migration or evolution narrative. Once the data emerged, showing that the so-called Ushiawa man was in fact a bear, the embarrassment was palpable. Yet the lesson gleaned from this incident transcends the shame of getting it wrong. It underscores the resilience of scientific inquiry. Mistakes are inevitable in any field that attempts to reconstruct events from fragmentary clues left behind by time. As technology evolves, re-evaluations and corrections become not just possible, but essential. The Ushiawa man's true identity as a prehistoric bear is now a potent cautionary tale, a humbling reminder that science does not exist in a vacuum of certainty. Instead, it is an ever-evolving process, subject to revisions and refinement as new evidence and methods emerge. In the end, this episode reminds us that each archaeological find must be tested rigorously, and that any premature conclusion, no matter how promising, can be dismantled by the unrelenting march of scientific progress. Buried histories, hidden civilizations, the gore, pit of Waterloo, vanished soldiers and mass graves. Venturing back to Europe, but in a more recent epoch, the Battle of Waterloo in 1815 stands as a pivotal moment in history. Napoleon Bonaparte's ambitions came to a dramatic end, reshaping the continent's political landscape. It's widely known that tens of thousands of soldiers perished during this brutal confrontation. Yet for centuries, historians and archaeologists were puzzled by a haunting question: where did all the bodies go? Only 2 complete skeletons were ever formally documented on the battlefield, leaving tens of thousands unaccounted for. The perplexity deepened as theories proliferated. Some proposed that local farmers had exhumed the bodies to grind the bones into fertilizer, a practice not entirely unheard of in the 19th century. Others speculated that the mass of corpses had been burned, scattered, or carried off in secret. These explanations, while plausible in part, lacked definitive proof. With each passing year, the story of the missing soldiers grew into a macabre legend, fueling investigative expeditions and sensational theories. New light was shed on this enigma when archaeologists from the organization Waterloo Uncovered began re-excavating certain strategic locations. Among their discoveries was the ominously labeled Gore Pit, a massive mass grave containing dismembered human remains, horse bones, and even the carcass of a cow. The pit's contents, fused with layers of mud, starkly illustrate the horrifying aftermath of the Napoleonic Wars. Rather than a dignified burial, bodies appeared to have been heaped together in a desperate, rushed bid to manage the overwhelming scale of death. The Gore Pit and other subsequent findings likely explain some portion of the soldier disappearance mystery. For one, they confirm that local inhabitants had neither the resources nor the inclination to provide proper burials. With armies in disarray and the threat of disease looming, the most practical solution was to bury as many remains as possible in a hurried and indiscriminate manner. Moreover, the sheer chaos following Napoleon's defeat provided little oversight on how the dead should be handled. It seems that the local population was simply doing what it could to mitigate the after-effects of war. The significance of these grim discoveries lies in their power to revisit the human cost of warfare. The Napoleonic Wars shaped Europe's destiny, but behind the grand historical narrative, countless individual stories ended abruptly on the battlefield. Although some questions remain, for example, whether there are additional mass graves, yet undiscovered, the story of the Gore Pit underscores the ephemeral nature of life during wartime. In the face of large-scale violence, even the most fundamental human rituals, such as proper burial, were overlooked or deemed impossible. Each new excavation at Waterloo contributes to a collective reckoning. The war was not just about shifting borders and changing power balances. It also constituted a massive human tragedy, whose full scope we are only beginning to comprehend. The first people in Connecticut, Paleo-Indian discoveries. From the muddy battlefields of Belgium, we shift our focus to the new frontiers of the American past. In 2019, a seemingly mundane construction project in Connecticut became an archaeological sensation. Workers building a new bridge across the Farmington River inadvertently unearthed a Paleo-Indian site revealing a glimpse of human presence in the region, dating back an astonishing 12,000 years. Prior to this discovery, there had been little material evidence to confirm early habitation in New England to such a distant era. At the site, archaeologists uncovered over 15,000 artifacts, including stone tools, hearth remnants, and other indicators of a transient settlement. The presence of such tools suggests a group adept at exploiting local resources. These Paleo-Indians may have followed herds of large game or taken advantage of seasonal bounties like fish and migratory birds. Post holes and shallow pits provided clues about shelter construction, likely makeshift structures that could be rapidly assembled and disassembled in tandem with the group's migratory habits. This discovery is consequential for several reasons. First, it challenges older theories that the harsh climate of the Northeast might have discouraged early human settlement, or at least limited it severely. Second, it aligns with similar finds across the Americas that trace human migration through a variety of routes, coastal passages, overland paths, and perhaps even seaborne journeys. As archaeologists piece together these fragments, a broader panorama emerges. Paleo-Indians were far more adaptable and resourceful than once assumed, capable of occupying diverse habitats from arid deserts to ice-edged forests. Moreover, the Connecticut find underscores the potential for significant discoveries in areas that have been routinely dismissed as peripheral. Historians once speculated that New England's earliest occupants arrived only later after more hospitable regions further south or west had been settled. These artifacts, however, indicate that even 12,000 years ago, groups were spreading across multiple ecological zones, exploring or possibly fleeing competition in other regions. Understanding the daily lives of these ancient settlers, how they hunted, gathered, and interacted with the environment, promises to deepen our comprehension of human resilience. The significance extends beyond archaeology. Local Native American communities can trace aspects of their heritage to the earliest known inhabitants of this land. While direct lineage is difficult to establish over such vast time spans, the unearthing of Paleo-Indian sites in Connecticut evokes a deeper recognition of indigenous continuity. These ancient footprints reaffirm that the roots of human history in North America run deeper and are more interconnected than mainstream narratives once acknowledged. In that sense, the Connecticut Bridge Project inadvertently bridged not just a river, but also a yawning gap in our historical record. It serves as a compelling reminder that the ground beneath our feet holds echoes of distant lives, waiting for the right moment to be revealed. The invincible warrior sword of Bavaria. If there's any single artifact that encapsulates the aura of ancient heroism, it might be the 3,000-year-old bronze sword, unearthed near the city of Nördlingen in Bavaria, Germany. Dubbed by media outlets as the invincible warrior sword, this find has captured public imagination because of its exceptional preservation and distinctive design. The sword's octagonal hilt is exquisitely crafted, a feature so rare that experts believe it would have required metallurgy skills possessed by only a handful of master smiths in Bronze Age Europe. The weapon was discovered in a burial context, resting close to the skeletal remains of a high-status individual. While the identity of the grave's occupant is unknown, the mere presence of such a fine blade suggests that the person either held significant power or was revered for martial prowess. Intriguingly, the sword shows almost no signs of wear or damage, hinting that it may not have seen actual combat. Perhaps it was reserved for ceremonial occasions, given only to those deemed worthy of such craftsmanship. Yet scientific testing revealed that the bronze used was of an exceptionally high standard, likely a complex alloy formulated to achieve a sharp, resilient edge. Experimental archaeology has taken replicas of similar swords to test their metal, often discovering that despite being bronze, they can hold up impressively in sparring exercises, cutting effectively through various materials. This raises the question of whether the sword's near pristine condition indicates it was purely symbolic, or if it was meticulously cared for by a warrior who prided himself on ritual cleanliness and maintenance. One theory is that the sword was part of a funerary set intended to guide the deceased into the afterlife. In certain Bronze Age cultures, individuals of high rank were buried with items thought to be essential or emblematic of their status in the next world. Fine weaponry in a grave could signify that the occupant's identity and social standing were closely tied to martial achievement. Alternatively, some have suggested that the sword was forged specifically for burial, serving as an offering to gods or ancestors, rather than for practical warfare. On a broader cultural level, the discovery underlines the sophistication of early European societies, which were more than capable of achieving advanced metallurgical feats. Often, we conceive of the Bronze Age as a transitional period overshadowed by the Iron Age. Yet artifacts like the Bavarian sword illustrate that Bronze Age smiths created objects not just of utilitarian value, but also of astounding artistic merit. It's a reminder that each epoch in human history possesses its unique genius and ingenuity spurred by social demands, spiritual beliefs, and the ceaseless human desire to push beyond the boundaries of what was previously thought possible. Today, the sword continues to spark awe, connecting us to a past where warfare, religion, and artistic brilliance fused into symbols that still resonate powerfully millennia after they were laid to rest. The mysterious cave in Ecuador, Cueva de los Tallos. Deep in the lush expanse of the Ecuadorian Amazon lies the Cave of the Tallos, an enigmatic subterranean labyrinth that has become a magnet for adventurers, archaeologists, and conspiracy theorists alike. First brought to global attention in the 1960s by Hungarian explorer Juan Moric, the site was rumored to contain treasures of incomparable value. Gleaming metal artifacts, cryptic inscriptions, and most famously, an entire metal library that some speculated could be the lost records of a vanished civilization or even evidence of extraterrestrial contact. Fueling these rumors, writer Erich von Däniken mentioned the cave in his 1973 book Gold of the Gods, linking it to his broader thesis about ancient astronauts visiting Earth. He posited that advanced technologies and out-of-place relics existed in Tallos' depths, left behind by cosmic travelers. The theory was sensational and quickly captured the public's imagination. But while headlines trumpeted the notion of alien wisdom hidden underground, many academics remained skeptical, pointing out that von Däniken's claims often lacked verifiable proof. In 1976, a large-scale expedition to the cave further sparked intrigue. This undertaking included not just scholars, but even astronaut Neil Armstrong, whose presence elevated the mission's prestige. Hopes soared that the explorers would unlock Tallos' secrets. Yet despite meticulous searches, they unearthed no incontrovertible evidence of an advanced civilization or a metal library. What they did find, however, was a complex network of natural passageways with some fascinating features. Some sections appeared suspiciously geometric, possibly shaped or modified by ancient inhabitants. Pottery shards and signs of human habitation dating back at least 2,500 years were also identified, prompting further questions about who had lived there and why. Local indigenous lore adds another layer to the mystery. The Shuar people who have long inhabited the region speak of spiritual forces within the cave and conduct rituals in its hidden chambers. These narratives, while not always aligning with mainstream archaeology, highlight a cultural dimension that emphasizes Taos's sacred status. Many explorers and researchers who have ventured in maintain a respect for the site's spiritual significance. This convergence of scientific inquiry, indigenous belief, and sensational rumor has made the cave of the Taos a unique crucible where fact and legend intermingle. In the years since, smaller expeditions have continued to map the cave's intricate corridors. Laser scanning, 3D modeling, and improved lighting technologies have yielded more accurate depictions of the subterranean world. Yet the supposed metal library remains elusive, existing primarily in the realm of speculation. The Taos phenomenon underscores a broader pattern seen in many so-called lost worlds. A fragment of unusual evidence combined with cultural stories and a thirst for the extraordinary can produce a legend that transcends known history. Whether a grand hoard of alien knowledge resides somewhere in Taos's darkest recesses is a question still tantalizingly open to debate, a testament to humanity's endless fascination with hidden realms and the unknown. Roman sacred spring in France. A precursor to modern spas. Moving from South America to Europe, we encounter a place where archaeology reveals a more tranquil aspect of ancient civilization, the Roman sacred spring near the village of Chambord in France. The Romans are renowned for their engineering genius and dedication to public works, including aqueducts, roads, and thermal baths. Yet the site at Chambord offers a rare glimpse into a transitional phase between prehistoric reverence for natural springs and the structured leisure culture of the Roman Empire. Initially used by Neolithic communities around 6,000 years ago, the spring was deemed sacred long before the Romans arrived. The earliest inhabitants likely performed rituals here, seeking fertility for their crops, healing for their sick, or blessings for their communal gatherings. Offerings, perhaps simple pottery or small tokens, were commonly left by the water's edge as tributes to local deities or spirits. Centuries later, when Roman forces occupied Gaul, they recognized the spiritual and cultural significance of the site. Rather than dismissing this ancient reverence, the Romans embraced it, erecting stone walls, reservoirs, and decorative arches around the spring to create one of the region's first spa-like complexes. This fusion of older spiritual customs with Roman engineering highlights how new empires often incorporate local traditions to gain acceptance. The Romans, for instance, could have easily built a separate bath complex elsewhere. Instead, they utilized the existing cultural aura of the spring to enhance its prestige. Archaeologists even discovered pottery shards bearing the face of Medusa, an iconic symbol of protection in Roman mythology. Depictions of Medusa near the water suggest a ritualistic function aimed at warding off malevolent forces. Of particular note is the layered time span of this site. Excavations show that people visited this spring for thousands of years, leaving behind evidence of evolving beliefs. Each new group either adapted or repurposed the space, layering their own rituals over the remnants of earlier practices. The discovery of Roman coins, possibly thrown into the waters as offerings, stands alongside prehistoric stone implements and fragments of pottery from different eras, painting a lively tapestry of continuity and adaptation. For modern historians, such multi-layered sites are invaluable. They illustrate that sanctuaries and communal centers form slowly over time, shaped by successive generations and belief systems. Studying the changes at Chambord helps us understand how religion, leisure, and public life interwove in ancient societies. Long before the notion of a luxury spa or wellness retreat became a 21st century trend, ancient people had already recognized the rejuvenating power of natural springs. The Roman layout, incorporating dedicated spaces for bathing, socializing, and making offerings, foreshadows the comprehensive spa culture that would flourish centuries later, melding the medicinal with the mystical. In essence, the sacred spring at Chambord reminds us that our quest for health, relaxations, and spiritual harmony runs deeper and older than we might suspect, connecting us across the ages to those who once gathered at these healing waters under the watchful gaze of gods and spirits. Secret animal sacrifice of the Maya in Copan, Honduras. Shifting across the Atlantic to Mesoamerica, the ancient Maya civilization is renowned for its sophisticated mathematics, astronomy, and awe-inspiring pyramids. Yet behind these achievements lurked darker rites, one of which has recently been brought to light: the secret animal sacrifice rituals at Copan in modern-day Honduras. Archaeological teams working in Copan, a major Maya urban center, uncovered startling evidence that big cats, particularly jaguars and pumas, were being raised and ritually sacrificed by the city's elite. In addition, the remains of exotic birds like macaws were discovered, suggesting a well-organized system for capturing and transporting rare fauna. What truly stunned researchers was the chemical analysis of the animals' bones and teeth. Results showed diets inconsistent with that of a wild predator, suggesting the animals were fed a controlled regimen, possibly to ensure they were in prime condition for the rituals. Historically, the Maya viewed jaguars as potent symbols of royalty and divine favor, often associating these formidable felines with the underworld and cosmic balance. When the aristocracy sacrificed such creatures, it conveyed both religious devotion and a display of state power. To offer a jaguar to the gods was an unmistakable sign of wealth, reinforcing the ruling class's status and connection to the divine. For outsiders, the idea of breeding majestic animals solely to be sacrificed might seem perplexing or cruel. However, within the Maya cosmos, these acts fulfilled intricate spiritual functions. Sacrifice, both human and animal, was intertwined with beliefs about renewing cosmic order, appeasing gods, and ensuring agricultural fertility. The staging of such rites was often communal, but certain ceremonies were conducted in more private elite contexts. The remains found in Copan indicate a specialized ritual environment, possibly accessible only to a select few priests, royalty, and high-ranking officials. These revelations change the narrative of Maya sacrificial practices, previously thought to revolve chiefly around prisoners of war or community-wide events. Now we see a parallel system in which an extended economy of exotic animals was maintained for exclusive ceremonies. This underscores the stratified and complex nature of Maya society, where symbolism, religion, and power were deeply intertwined. Rulers who commanded the resources to procure and maintain these rare animals could effectively showcase their dominion over both nature and the spiritual realm. Additionally, the discovery complicates our perception of the Maya as peaceful astronomers or bloodthirsty tyrants. Truth often lies in between. While they excelled in mathematics, calendar making, and monumental architecture, they also engaged in practices that modern sensibilities might find disturbing. This duality reminds us that past civilizations, much like our own, were multifaceted. They achieved remarkable intellectual feats while also committing acts that appear brutal through today's moral lens. Ultimately, these findings at Copan offer a nuanced glimpse into how the interplay of religion, political power, and natural resources helped sustain a vibrant, though sometimes violent, Maya cultural identity. The giant stone circle, Ring of Brodgar in Scotland. From the humid jungles of Honduras, we journey to the windswept Orkney Islands off the northern tip of Scotland. Here, the Ring of Brodgar stands as one of the United Kingdom's largest and most mysterious Neolithic stone circles, rivaling the more famous Stonehenge in its cultural and architectural significance. Composed of towering stone monoliths, originally numbering up to 60 with 27 surviving today, the circle spans about 104 meters in diameter. A sizable ditch surrounds the monument, its original depth hinting at the massive labor that once went into shaping this ancient landscape. Archaeologists date the Ring of Brodgar to around 4,000 years ago, positioning it firmly in the Neolithic period when new technologies, farming practices, and social structures were flourishing. Yet much about its purpose remains speculative. Traditional theories hold that stone circles served as ceremonial sites aligned with solar, lunar, or stellar events. The precise geometry of the Ring of Brodgar supports such an interpretation. Many stone circles exhibit alignments corresponding to solstices and equinoxes, acting as giant calendars. However, the Orkney Islands have their own distinct history, including advanced communal sites like Skara Brae, suggesting that local culture might have shaped this monument for slightly different reasons. Some experts believe the ring acted as a spiritual axis, where important seasonal festivals were enacted. Others suggest it could be a major communal gathering point for trade, social bonding, or conflict resolution. Folklore from later Norse occupations recast the ring as a temple of the sun, tying it to the pantheon of Norse deities such as Odin and Freya. Various legends speak of couples pledging their love in the circle's center, or clans forging temporary alliances under the watchful gaze of the standing stones. Artifacts discovered within the immediate vicinity are scarce, adding to the riddle. Occasional stone tools and pottery shards appear, but no extensive burials or treasure hoards have been found to provide clearer evidence of how the site was used. The ditch surrounding the circle, however, stands out as a monumental feat. Digging through the island's bedrock with basic Neolithic tools would have required enormous community effort, suggesting a shared or unifying purpose behind the project. While Stonehenge in southern England typically dominates public consciousness, the Ring of Brodgar has grown in stature among scholars. Together with other Orkney sites like the Stones of Stennis and Maeshowe, Brodgar forms part of a concentration of Neolithic monuments, leading some archaeologists to dub Orkney a heart of Neolithic Europe. Modern visitors are awed by the ring's quiet grandeur, the interplay of sunlight and shadow across the tall stones, and the sense that, like many ancient mysteries, it both reveals and conceals aspects of a culture's spiritual life. Even after thousands of years, the circle seems to whisper stories of cosmic alignments, communal identities, and the human impulse to create lasting marks on the land. Whether an astronomical observatory, a religious sanctuary, or both, the Ring of Brodgar remains an enduring testament to humanity's drive to connect with forces beyond itself, forging monumental structures that outlive their makers by millennia. Mythic echoes and the frontiers of understanding. Family sacrifice in the Moche civilization of Peru. The ancient Moche civilization, which once flourished along Peru's northern coastline, is often remembered for its elaborate artwork. Intricate irrigation systems and monumental adobe pyramids known as huacas. Recent archaeological finds, however, have brought attention to another dimension of Moche society, shocking sacrificial practices that sometimes unfolded within the confines of elite family tombs. At the site of Huaca El Pueblo, in the broader region of the famed Huaca Rajada, where the Lord of Sipan was discovered, investigators uncovered a royal burial chamber that redefined notions of Moche rituals. In this chamber, archaeologists found the remains of 6 individuals, parents, children, and even a granddaughter, arranged around the sarcophagus of a noble woman. Initial analysis suggested they died simultaneously, raising the question of whether they were sacrificed to accompany their matriarch into the afterlife. Most startling forensic evidence indicated that strangulation was the cause of death for several of the individuals. This finding conflicted with earlier assumptions that Moche sacrifices primarily targeted war captives from outside the community. Instead, these revelations point to a deeply personal and intra-family dynamic. Genetic testing confirmed the group's close blood ties, leaving experts to ponder the motive. One possibility is that this was a prestigious death rite wherein family members volunteered or were compelled to join a high-status individual in death-preserving family unity in the spiritual realm. Another explanation is that these sacrifices demonstrated the elite's dominance extending even over their own kin. If so, it served as a powerful political statement, ensuring that the line of succession or loyalty extended beyond mortal boundaries. This practice might have also reinforced the noble woman's sanctity, solidifying her post-mortem role as an intermediary between the living and deities. The significance of this discovery goes beyond the mere confirmation of a gruesome practice. It highlights the complexity of Moche society, where religious ideology, social hierarchy, and familial ties intersected in ways that defy modern conceptions of morality. Previously, Moche's sacrificial evidence was mainly linked to large-scale ceremonies often depicted in Moche art, showing priests, warriors, and captives in public rituals. The reality, however, might be more nuanced. Elite households had their own internal ceremonies performed behind the closed doors of family mausoleums. In a broader anthropological context, the Moche example underscores how sacrifice, especially within families, could serve multiple functions, reinforcing lineage, invoking divine favor, and showcasing the potency of the ruling class. This deeper, more personal dimension of ritual violence complicates our picture of ancient Peru, reminding us that behind every artifact or temple facade are individual stories of devotion, power, and sometimes tragedy. As archaeologists continue to explore Moche sites, They piece together a narrative of a civilization unafraid to merge the intimate bonds of family with the formidable demands of the divine and the political, creating an intersection of love, loyalty, fear, and reverence that resonates through the archaeological record. Legends of Anunnaki, Nephilim, and giants, a convergence of myth. In the vast tapestry of ancient narratives, few tales are as persistent or as puzzling as the stories surrounding the Anunnaki, the Nephilim, and giant beings across diverse cultures. From Sumerian clay tablets to the Hebrew Bible, from Greek mythologies of Titans to Norse sagas of Jotun, there seems to be a recurring motif of larger-than-life figures who blur the lines between the divine and the mortal. This phenomenon naturally raises the question of whether these traditions represent mere storytelling echoes or recollections of a distant shared reality. The Sumerians spoke of the Anunnaki as gods descending from the heavens, bestowing law and culture upon early humanity. They were neither ephemeral spirits nor intangible deities. Rather, they had physical manifestations often depicted with regal adornments and stylized wings. Around the same time, or slightly later, the Hebrew texts reference the Nephilim described as offspring of the sons of God and daughters of men. The Book of Genesis portrays them as mighty warriors or men of renown, sometimes interpreted as giants, who embodied a troubling fusion of the sacred and the profane. In Greek tradition, the Titans predated the Olympian gods, eventually defeated and cast into the underworld. Similarly, Norse legends revolve around giants Jotun who predate and often threaten the divine realm of Asgard. Such parallels spark the imagination, might they point to a universal mythic template embedded in human psychology or collective memory? Or do they suggest that ancient civilizations were retelling the same cosmic events under different cultural lenses? Modern theories have attempted to unify these accounts through esoteric interpretations, suggesting an age when gods or extraterrestrial entities roamed Earth. This view finds support among fringe researchers who see evidence of advanced technology, megalithic structures, and cryptic references to star beings in ancient texts. Mainstream scholarship, however, interprets the similarities as the outcome of cultural diffusion and the archetypal role of giants in explaining natural phenomena, earthquakes, floods, or the creation of landscapes. Regardless of the stance taken, it's notable that these giant or semi-divine figures serve narrative functions. They represent cosmic order or chaos. They teach lessons about hubris, and they underscore the fragility of humanity in the face of towering powers. From a religious standpoint, the fall of the Nephilim or the imprisonment of the Titans often symbolizes the triumph of divine justice over overreaching ambition. In a more psychological reading, these myths externalize human fears and aspirations, the longing for contact with the divine, the dread of unstoppable natural forces, and the moral quagmire of beings that straddle the boundary between mortal and godlike. Today, the interplay of these legends continues to captivate. Some see them as coded messages about lost civilizations, others as symbolic instructions for moral conduct. Whether you approach these stories with spiritual reverence or scientific skepticism, they remain a potent testament to the human need to understand our origins, our boundaries, and the potential intersection with realms beyond our ordinary experience. In bridging the gap between the known and the mythic tales of giants, fallen angels, and ancient gods, persist as vital threads in the grand narrative of human culture. Mazika Cave, Poland, prehistoric cannibalism in Europe. The notion of cannibalism as a survival strategy or ritual act is not exclusive to the Bronze Age or the Moche. In fact, evidence from Europe's deep past suggests that cannibalism was a more widespread phenomenon than once acknowledged. One of the most telling examples is the Mazika cave in Poland, which has yielded a trove of human skeletal remains bearing unmistakable signs of butchery. Radiocarbon dating places the site's use around 16,000 years ago, shortly after the last major ice age. When archaeologists first examined the bones, they found cut marks that were consistent with the disarticulation of limbs, as well as the splitting of long bones to extract marrow. These were not incidental scratches from environmental factors, but methodical incisions indicative of practiced skill. The question was whether this was an isolated event, perhaps driven by intense hunger during a brutal winter, or a repeated behavior embedded in the local culture. Stratigraphic analysis revealing multiple layers of similar practices suggested the latter. Mazika Cave is not alone in this regard. Contemporary studies in Spain, France, and even parts of England have pointed to parallel instances of cannibalism typically dated to the Paleolithic or Mesolithic periods. While each site has its unique context, such as environmental stresses, small group isolation, or ritualistic beliefs, the pattern is sufficiently common to challenge preconceived notions about the innate moral frameworks of early humans. For them, cannibalism might have been a pragmatic adaptation to scarcer food supplies in glacial conditions. Alternatively, it could have played a ceremonial role possibly linked to the absorption of an individual's life essence or the display of power within or between groups. Mazika Cave's significance lies in pushing us to confront the stark reality of prehistoric survival. Humans in these eras faced a precarious existence contending with fluctuating climates, competition for resources, and limited social networks. At the same time, the presence of advanced stone tools and the strategic way bones were processed show that these groups were far from mindless scavengers. They made informed choices, balancing immediate survival needs against social or spiritual concerns. Moreover, the cave's geographic location in Poland highlights that such practices weren't confined to Europe's western fringes. They permeated multiple regions, suggesting a deep-rooted behavioral or cultural pattern. While modern societies recoil from cannibalism as a taboo, archaeology provides a dispassionate window into how flexibly early humans responded to existential challenges. Indeed, the controversies arising from these findings underscore the tension between a modern ethical standpoint and the objective quest to understand ancient cultures on their own terms. Mazika Cave stands as a somber testament that the line between survival and the taboo is indeed historically malleable, shaped by the extremes of environmental pressures and the complexities of human belief. Great Nubian Cathedral in Old Dongola, Sudan. Amid the deserts and Nile floodplains of Sudan, the land of Nubia once played host to powerful kingdoms that rivaled their neighbors in both military might and cultural sophistication. Situated near the intersection of African and Middle Eastern spheres, these civilizations left behind a legacy of grand architecture, intricate artwork, and enduring religious institutions. Nowhere is this more evident than in Old Dongola, a city that rose to prominence around the 6th century CE as the capital of the Christian Nubian kingdom of Makuria. In recent excavations, archaeologists discovered the sprawling remains of a great cathedral. a building that once served as the seat of Nubian archbishops. Immense walls, still standing after centuries of desert storms and neglect, hinted at a complex once resplendent with vibrant frescoes and ornate columns. Detailed iconography featured scenes from the Bible, local saints, and even episodes of Nubian history, underscoring the interplay between universal Christian symbolism and regional identity. This cathedral played a pivotal role in unifying the Nubian populace under Christianity. Historical records indicate that by the 7th century, Nubian kingdoms had adopted Christianity as their state religion, leading to a rich fusion of local customs and Byzantine-influenced liturgical practices. Monks, priests, and bishops became central figures in governance, and cathedrals, like the one in Old Dongola, symbolized the nexus of spiritual authority and temporal power. Over time, as Islamic forces gained ground in the region, Old Dongola began to wane, its religious institutions overshadowed by the gradual shift toward Islam among the populace. What makes Old Dongola, and this cathedral in particular, so intriguing is how it reflects a pivotal crossroads in Africa's religious history. Unlike the abrupt conquests seen elsewhere, the transition from Christianity to Islam in Nubia was gradual and at times mutually accommodating. Excavations of the cathedral's layers have revealed that modifications continued well into the period of Islamic influence, suggesting a nuanced cultural dialogue rather than a sudden displacement. Even as ecclesiastical power faded, Christian communities persisted for centuries, leaving behind a mosaic of faiths coexisting side by side. The significance of these ruins extends beyond academic interest. For modern Sudan, they stand as a tangible link to a phase of history, often overshadowed by narratives centered on ancient Egypt or the more famous civilizations of the Mediterranean. Old Dongola's cathedral challenges the narrow lens through which we often view Africa, highlighting an era when architectural grandeur and theological debate flourished under a distinctly Nubian banner. Today, conservationists face the urgent task of preserving what remains of this monumental structure threatened by environmental factors and modern development. In doing so, they hope to keep alive a story that is at once uniquely Nubian and yet reflective of broader human themes: the rise and fall of kingdoms, the spread of religions, and the resilience of culture in the face of relentless change. The anonymous civilization in the Himalayas, high among the world's tallest peaks in a region synonymous with remoteness and spiritual retreats, evidence has emerged of an anonymous ancient civilization in the Himalayas. This civilization remains so enigmatic that even its name is unknown. Archaeologists have only a scattering of terracotta figurines, partially collapsed ceremonial structures, and a few cryptic rock engravings to guide their inquiries. The area in question straddles a portion of the Himalayas that is difficult to access, even with modern transport, a testament to the challenges earlier inhabitants must have faced. The terracotta statues discovered are particularly intriguing. Most depict mounted figures, sometimes featuring 2 or more riders on a single horse. These riders wear cloaks and helmets ornamented with swirling patterns, unlike those found in nearby cultures such as ancient Tibet or the Indus Valley. Since writing has not been uncovered, researchers speculate about the group's origins. Did they migrate from Central Asia, bringing unique artistic conventions, or were they an offshoot of a larger civilization that splintered off and chose the high mountains for refuge or religious pursuits? Beyond the figurines, a pair of stone foundations believed to be ceremonial structures hint at organized religious activity. One theory posits that the horse so central to the figurines held a sacred status, perhaps serving as a totemic animal or a conduit to the divine. Some hypothesize that these ceremonies might have sought protection from natural calamities given the region's harsh climate and seismic instability. Others imagine a cult of horse deities or ancestors, with the figurines representing revered lineage founders or mythological heroes who tamed the rugged landscape. No definitive timeline has yet been established for when this civilization flourished. Radiocarbon dating of charred organic materials suggests activity anywhere from 1200 BCE to 500 BCE, but the margin of error is significant, and it's unclear if the site's entire occupation falls within that range. It is possible that the region was settled and abandoned multiple times due to shifting climate patterns or conflict with neighboring groups. The anonymity of this Himalayan civilization underscores the reality that countless cultures have risen and disappeared without leaving behind the textual records that historians rely on. We are left with tantalizing fragments, statues with unearthly shapes, remnants of buildings that defy classification and geographical isolation, that begs the question of how and why these people thrived so far from major trade routes. For now, the site remains an ongoing puzzle capturing the imagination of scholars who continue to return season after season. They labor to map the area more thoroughly, hoping for a breakthrough, perhaps an inscribed artifact or a burial site that reveals the identity of a culture hidden by both millennia and the formidable Himalayan peaks. The mysterious pit beneath the Sphinx of Giza. Few monuments embody the ancient world's grandeur and enigma more profoundly than the great Sphinx of Giza. With a human head, a lion's body, and an inscrutable gaze, this colossal statue has withstood thousands of years of shifting sands and political upheavals. Yet even after centuries of study, rumors persist about what might lie beneath its massive frame. Since Greco-Roman times, travelers' accounts have mentioned secret tunnels or chambers hidden beneath the pores of the Sphinx, fueling endless speculation about lost archives or treasures. In modern times, archaeologists and geologists have employed advanced techniques such as ground-penetrating radar to detect any anomalies in the bedrock. While some voids or passages have been identified, none so far match the grandiose descriptions found in legend, no vast chamber brimming with papyrus scrolls or golden artifacts. Various proposals suggest these anomalies could be natural cavities or excavation trenches from earlier attempts to restore or study the monument. Egyptologists also point out that the Sphinx was carved from the bedrock of the Giza Plateau, making it structurally unlikely that large chambers could exist without destabilizing the monument. Still, the persistent rumor of a hall of records beneath the Sphinx endures, often linked to esoteric beliefs that an advanced ancient civilization or even beings from Atlantis left behind hidden knowledge. The notion gained popularity in the 20th century through mystical writers and psychic readings that claimed to channel such information. Despite the lack of concrete archaeological support, the idea remains compelling to alternative theorists. They argue that official excavations may have withheld findings or that the relevant passageways remain sealed by ancient Egyptian priests who guarded the Sphinx's secrets. From a historical perspective, the Sphinx's true origins remain partially shrouded in mystery. While mainstream archaeology attributes its construction to the reign of Pharaoh Khafra around 2500 BCE, some argue that weathering patterns indicate a much earlier period of construction. If so, that would raise provocative questions about pre-dynastic Egyptian society and its technological capabilities. However, these fringe interpretations have not gained wide acceptance due to the weight of evidence supporting a fourth dynasty creation. The interplay of unverified speculation and methodical science makes the Sphinx a crucible of scholarly tension. It reminds us that iconic monuments often serve as screens onto which we project our deepest fascinations. Lost worlds, cosmic connections, advanced primordial cultures, or apocalyptic secrets. While most official studies assert that no hidden city or library lies beneath the lion-bodied colossus, the Sphinx continues to capture the public imagination. In a sense, the real secret may lie in our collective eagerness to fill gaps in knowledge with grand stories to transform any subtle echo of the past into a full-blown legend. The Sphinx's silent, half-smiling visage offers no clarifications, leaving each generation to interpret its mysteries anew. Werewolves in Mesopotamia. The oldest shape-shifting legends. Legends of shape-shifting humans, commonly known as werewolves, often bring to mind medieval European folklore, complete with moonlit transformations and terrified villagers. Yet the oldest textual record of a man cursed to become a wolf appears in Mesopotamian traditions, specifically in the Epic of Gilgamesh, one of humanity's earliest literary works, dating back over 4,000 years. In one episode, the goddess Ishtar punishes a shepherd who spurned her advances by turning him into a wolf, thereby condemning him to be chased away by his own dogs and kin. This motif of divine retribution underscores how the concept of lycanthropy, literally wolfman, has far older roots than many realize. Additional historical threads reinforce this. King Nebuchadnezzar II of Babylon was reputed to suffer from a lycanthropic delusion, believing himself a wild beast. Although modern psychiatry would diagnose such an individual with clinical lycanthropy, ancient observers viewed it as a curse or punishment sent by gods. The theme of a strong or prideful man reduced to an animalistic state serves as both moral lesson and cautionary tale. Parallels appear across civilizations. The ancient Greeks spoke of King Lycaon, turned into a wolf by Zeus as punishment for his impiety. Roman historian Pliny the Elder recounted hearsay about entire tribes with the power to become wolves during certain rites. Norse sagas referenced Ulfhednar warriors who wore wolf skins, channeling a lupine ferocity in battle. Collectively, these myths and anecdotes underline the cultural fascination with boundary-blurring transformations, what happens when human rationality is overtaken by bestial instincts. In Mesopotamia, the portrayal of a man-turned-wolf served as an object lesson in the perils of divine wrath or hubris. It also reflected broader concerns about identity and purity in societies where strict class and moral codes existed. To be cast out as a monster was akin to social death, a fate that severed one from the protective fabric of kinship and community. Interestingly, none of these ancient accounts rely on a full moon as a catalyst, nor do they depict an uncontrollable curse running rampant in the population. Instead, the shapeshift is singular an exception triggered by a vengeful deity or moral breach. Over time, the werewolf legend evolved in Europe, taking on Christian overtones that associated lycanthropy with witchcraft and demonic pacts. This evolution highlights how each culture reshapes core mythic elements to fit its theological framework and social anxieties. By tracing the lineage back to Mesopotamia, we gain a broader understanding of how shape-shifting myths function. They reflect communal fears of isolation, of breaking social taboos, and of the uncontrolled power lurking within. Even in our modern era, the werewolf persists as a cinematic and literary staple, a testament to how these primal myths continue to resonate with fundamental human questions about identity, morality, and the thin, ever-shifting line between man and beast. Parallel universes in Antarctica and intelligent reptiles pushing scientific boundaries. While ancient myths provide an endless reservoir of wonder, modern science occasionally serves up its own brand of enigma. Consider the flurry of excitement in 2016 when an experiment called Anita Antarctic Impulsive Transient Antenna picked up data hinting at high-energy particles emerging from the Earth rather than descending from space. Popular media latched on to the notion that NASA had discovered evidence of a parallel universe where time runs in reverse. Though scientists remained cautious, stressing that anomalous data points are not definitive proof of alternate realities, the wave of speculation illustrated how readily the public embraces cosmic mysteries. To seasoned researchers, the possibility of parallel universes remains an open but unproven frontier, bolstered by theories in quantum mechanics and cosmology. Nonetheless, the Antarctica case underscores a crucial point. Groundbreaking science often emerges at the intersection of instrumentation limits and theoretical audacity. Even if the Anita data is ultimately explained by mundane factors, the sense of wonder it sparked reflects humanity's collective yearning to glimpse what lies beyond our known dimension. A similarly speculative domain arises from the realm of paleontology and evolutionary what-ifs. In the 1980s, Dale Russell's concept of Troodon sapiens, an intelligent dinosaur, fascinated both scientists and the general public. Troodon, a relatively small bird-like dinosaur with a comparatively large brain, was seen as a candidate that might have evolved advanced intelligence had the cataclysmic asteroid 65 million years ago never struck. Russell's hypothetical sculpture depicted a bipedal reptilian being with dexterous hands and keen binocular vision, fueling sci-fi imaginings of a lizard people civilization. While mainstream paleontology views the scenario as speculative, it resonates with popular culture's penchant for reptilian humanoids featured in countless science fiction tales. And more intriguingly, in conspiracy theories alleging hidden reptilian elites in modern governments. Scientific caution dictates that, absent a real evolutionary record, we can only guess at how dinosaur intelligence would have progressed. Yet the concept alone pushes us to reconsider humanity's place in the cosmic scheme. Are we the inevitable pinnacle of intelligence, or just one branch among many possible outcomes? Both the Anita incident and the hypothetical reptilian civilization highlight the fragility of our scientific certainties. High-energy neutrinos in Antarctica, or the imaginative leaps in evolutionary timelines, challenge the boundary between hard data and hypothesis. They remind us that science is not merely a catalogue of established facts, but a dynamic process that thrives on curiosity, testable predictions and the willingness to entertain possibilities, even those that sound like science fiction. As we refine our instruments and accumulate more data, some of these provocative ideas might find partial validation or be supplanted by more grounded explanations. Yet their cultural resonance underscores that the pursuit of knowledge is deeply interwoven with our capacity for wonder, bridging the gap between ancient myth and cutting-edge theoretical physics. Port Orford, meteorite. Bosnian pyramids, the mysterious sword of the Wam. Skyquakes, Muziris, the oldest bridge in Iraq, and concluding reflections. Even as we near the end of our journey through unexplained events and archaeological wonders, a constellation of other enigmas beckons, each illuminating a different facet of humanity's relentless quest to understand the extraordinary. Take the Port Orford meteorite from the mid-19th century, for example. Allegedly spotted by geologist John Evans in Oregon, this colossal space rock was never relocated despite multiple expeditions. A sample Evans provided was later shown to match meteorites found in Chile, prompting suspicions of either an honest mistake or a deliberate hoax. The meteorite's disappearance continues to vex collectors and scientists, embodying the fine line between documented discoveries and legends. Equally fraught with debate are the so-called Bosnian pyramids near the town of Visoko. Enthusiasts believe these hills are man-made structures dating back over 12,000 years, claiming they emit mysterious energies conducive to healing. Mainstream archaeology maintains that they are natural formations, pointing to flawed methodology in the promotional excavations. Regardless of the verdict, the site serves as a case study in how local pride, tourism, and unconventional theories can collide with academic rigor, an intersection that sometimes yields more cultural insight than scientific breakthrough. Meanwhile, the mysterious sword discovered in the River Wam in northern England captures the medieval imagination, an exquisitely crafted 13th-century blade inscribed with coded letters that have eluded all attempts at decryption. Whether a cryptic invocation, a personal motto, or purely decorative flourish, the inscription stands as an enduring question from a bygone era. In a similar auditory realm of intrigue, Skyquake's loud, unexplained booms heard around the world continue to baffle scientists. Proposed causes range from atmospheric disturbances and distant sonic booms to geophysical phenomena, yet no single explanation neatly fits every recorded occurrence. On the other side of the globe, we find the lost port city of Muziris in India, described in Roman chronicles as a bustling trade hub for pepper and other exotic goods. Despite its historical significance, Muziris vanished from records in the 5th century, possibly submerged by floods or overshadowed by new routes. Excavations at Pattanam in Kerala have since uncovered Roman coins, pottery shards, and even pepper seeds, breathing new life into the city's legacy as a symbol of ancient globalization. Finally, turning to the cradle of civilization in Mesopotamia, archaeologists in Iraq uncovered what may be the world's oldest bridge, a structure over 4,000 years old, near the site of Girsu Tello. Built of fired bricks and robust enough to endure millennia of floods, it testifies to the innovation and communal effort shaping the first true cities in human history. In reflecting on all these tales, ranging from catastrophic landslides on New Zealand's White Island to labyrinthine Greek myths, from the coded inscriptions on medieval swords to the whispered rumors of hidden chambers beneath the Sphinx, the overarching theme emerges clearly: humanity has always been and remains insatiably curious. Each enigma feeds our desire to peel back the layers of what is known, to test the boundaries of our understanding, and to embrace the possibility that the next discovery could redefine our sense of reality. Science, religion, mythology, and folklore all intersect in these narratives, reinforcing that what we know is dwarfed by what we have yet to uncover. Whether it be lost cities, unsolved inscriptions, or anomalies in subatomic particles, these mysteries remind us that the quest for knowledge is both our greatest challenge and our most enduring legacy. Such stories encourage humility, recognizing how easily we might misinterpret bones for human ancestors when they belong to bears, or proclaim to have found giant pyramids where nature merely shaped a hill. Yet they also spark awe and inspiration. We stand on the shoulders of countless generations who have gazed at volcanoes, labyrinths, or the night sky, wondering at forces greater than themselves. In that sense, the unending chain of mysteries is a testament to human creativity and perseverance. As each new discovery peels away one layer of ignorance, it often reveals deeper questions that set the stage for tomorrow's exploration. We close this journey reminded that the world is vast, our history is rich, and the unknown is an ever-present invitation, a final frontier that beckons the adventurous spirit in each of us to push forward, questing for answers that may forever lie just out of reach.